called it the geriatric protests because most of the people were older. There was no consistent messaging. So I thought, what exactly are we accomplishing here?
So there's a potential to harness this energy and make it count.
They missed the 60s and they wanted to get out there and, protest something.
And welcome to this episode of Lively. I'm Jim Hummel. Thank you for joining us. We are joined this week by Cienki, National Committeewoman for the Rhode Island GOP, and Brown University political science professor Wendy Schiller. Welcome to you both.
Thanks.
Good to have you here.
Good to be here.
Providence was one of dozens of cities where large crowds rallied last weekend to protest the policies of the Trump administration. The so-called No Kings protests were largely peaceful, but what did they accomplish? Sue, I know, Sue and Wendy, we all looked at this. As you were watching this, what did you think? Huge turnout, 7 million across the country.
I have no objection to people that want to peacefully protest, but looking at the crowd, there was one in my town. I called it the geriatric protests because most of the people were older. There was no consistent messaging. So I thought, what exactly are we accomplishing here? But hey, if people feel better about themselves, go protest. I woke up the next day and was glad to hear that we don't have a king.
Well, I think any sort of collective action that's peaceful is a hallmark of our democracy. But for the Democratic Party and the progressives who want to actually thwart the Trump administration policies or counteract them some way, you have to get those people who went to the marches to register to vote and to vote. And the Republicans have become much better at that, at getting that sort of popular energy wave and translating into turnout. At least we saw that in 2024. So the Democrats still have a tremendous amount of work to do. We're about to see Virginia and New Jersey. And, is this energy, this anti-Trump energy, going to translate into victories for the Democrats in both of those states? And that's just less than 2 weeks away. And I think that's a big test for both parties to figure out where people's sentiments lie.
Yeah, I think that you're right. It's going to be interesting to see how those races turn out. They're not expected Republican wins. So if Republicans get close or if they win one of those races, it should send a shocking message to the Democrats.
I've heard this talking point, I will call it. Oh, it's older people and it doesn't what do you mean by that? So a lot of older people turned out maybe because they've had a lot of life and they're concerned because they've seen the way a lot of presidents have acted over the years. And this is the anomaly.
Yeah, I just looked thinking they missed the 60s and they wanted to get out there and, protest something. They don't like things. I feel immense sympathy for the young people. It is difficult if you're a first-time homeowner to get into the housing market. It is difficult. Affordability in this state in particular is difficult. So I could see why you would be frustrated and want to protest. But my observation is it was a lot of older people who do vote. They do get out and vote. You have to get those low propensity voters engaged. I look at what's going to happen in 2026. Typically non-presidential years, people stay home. So it's how do you get those people to the polls, tell them it is important if you want your voice heard in a democracy. You have to show up. You have to register to vote. Where is the energy? You see somebody like Scott Pressler, who's all over the place, making sure people that go and register to vote. It's not only getting them to register to vote, it's making sure they get to the polls and vote. You have mail voting, you have early voting now, you have day. There's plenty of opportunities to exercise your choice.
Yeah, and the previous years, 2018, very, very large turnout. That was a good year for the Democrats in terms of winning the House of Representatives. And 2022 turnout was not as high as 2018, but a little higher than historical average. It's about a 37% turnout, typically 38% turnout in midterm elections. So you're right. Now, the curious things for the Democrats are that, 72% of people over the age of 65 vote in presidential elections and most of the time in the midterm elections. So older people are the ones who are more likely to vote in a midterm election. So in that sense, getting people who are older out the door now bodes better for the Democrats in 26. And the Republicans typically win about 9% more of that population, the older population, in a presidential vote than Democrats. Trump lost ground with some of that population because of this democracy issue, at least in the polling. So there's a potential to harness this energy and make it count. But that's a year away, at least for the elections that are not Virginia and New Jersey.
So the demographics clearly on a midterm are different, but I mean, it's clear, and you saw the research. In 2020, Joe Biden was able to harness that. There were reasons otherwise with Trump, but he brought in the young voters, and then a lot of them shifted back to Trump in the 2024. So I guess that's the theory is, where are they going to go now? And what message are the Democrats giving for them to come back?
Well, when you say shifting back, what Trump did, what he did in 2016 and what he did in 2024, he actually got more young men under the age of about 32 to vote. And when they did vote, the majority of those young men voted for him. So he increased turnout among groups of people that were not voting before. So I'm not sure how many people shifted from 2020 to 2024, but we know that younger men got out in bigger numbers, and they got out in bigger numbers for Trump, white men and also Latino men. And then, so you did see that kind of shift there. And then independents voted for Trump when they voted for Biden in 2020. So now Trump's not on the ballot technically in 2026. So he's not up for re-election. He's not up for any kind of election of office. And the Democrats will have to work harder at figuring out issues that will motivate voters other than we don't want Trump. Because unlike the first term, he can't run again. So there is a finite term and end to the Trump presidency.
Yeah, he'll be gone. He'll be gone in 2028. I mean, there's an end to his presidency. He will be gone. So it can't be. And you see that a lot here. The Democratic message is Trump, 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 Trump. Well, what are you doing here, particularly in this state? I mean, it's run by all Democrats. They own everything in this state. And are people happy with the direction of the state? And that's got to be a Republican message in 2026. You know, is there time for a change? What are we doing here? And do we have effective leadership here?
Yeah, and what message are the Democrats going to give in the midterms? There's no one person. It's kind of scattershot. There's a little bit of internecine warfare. I mean, they've got a year to do it. But what is the message to bring people out?
Well, you know, if you look at 2006, you look at 2018, different strategies, both led by Nancy Pelosi for the Democratic Party nationally. In 2006, it was a single national message, anti-Iraq war, anti-Bush. 2018, she let everybody run district level. Just said, figure out the messaging that works in your district, figure out the issues your constituents care about. We'll run against Trump nationally, but in terms of issues, we can make this much more diverse. And they did very well that way. I think that's the only way that they can win. They have fewer seats that they have to win because the margin's so small in 26. But they have to let Democrats in more moderate areas be moderate. And I think you're seeing some implosion already from sort of these, you know, younger people coming out of the woodwork in Maine. You're seeing the implosion of a candidate now in the Senate race. And they have to the national organization has to help vet. And I'm not sure that they're doing a great job of that yet.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see what happens in Maine, particularly that the governor, Janet Mills, jumped into the race.
At age 77.
At age 77, and has stated publicly, I will only run for one term.
Against Susan Collins.
Who I believe is 76. I think Susan Collins is 76. So
they're right in the demographic of the No Kings rally. So
and it's interesting because Susan Collins would be what I would consider a moderate Republican. And it's the same type of Republican that you need here in any of the New England states. Someone that is willing to cross the aisle and get things done for the constituents in your state. But the Democrats have some very wild ideas on the far left, people that are running. You see what's happening in New York City. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. If Mandami actually wins that race, which it looks all indicators say that he's going to win and be the mayor of New York City, what happens to New York City? What policies does he actually push? And is that going to be a disaster for the Republicans? For the Democrats. And on the Republican side, it's a long year. What does Trump do? Does he hurt the party? Does he help the party? Is he quiet? How much defending does a candidate that runs in a moderate state, much like Republican, have to do to win.
What do you think about the Democrat strategy now about we are drawing the line in terms of the government shutdown? We want to negotiate the health care now because the open enrollment period's coming up in November, and I think that's going to hit red and blue states clearly. What do you think about the strategy to keep it going and not play ball with the Republicans on a continuing resolution right now?
The Democrats always face this dilemma in the end of the day because more of their constituents view government as necessary. It's not the case that more Democratic voters rely on government programs than Republican voters. In fact, for food stamps, you have more people in red states that rely on food stamps, and the food stamps are in danger. 47 million Americans get food stamps. So the Republicans, the question is, how responsive are they when their own constituents are getting hurt by the denial of benefits? So it is true that right now, technically, the Democrats are keeping the government shut down. They won't vote for the funding mechanism in the Senate. They've already passed this threshold of sticking together when people found out that their health insurance premiums are going to go way up. And those premiums are going to go way up no matter what. That's not going to, if the government reopens, that's not going to change. What happens is the subsidy that you can take a tax break on the increased cost of an Obamacare subsidy, that will expire at the end of December.
Which has been baked in for years and we don't even know it. That's what's kept the prices down.
President Trump has basically said, look, I'll do that. That seems fine to me. I don't want to, 12 million people raising their taxes. I don't want to do that. Give me something and I'll take care of that. But at the same time, he's urging them not to give in. And then, the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, is sort of keeping the House out so he doesn't actually have to swear in a duly elected House member from Arizona who's a Democrat, because she has pledged to sign the discharge petition on the Epstein files. So there's complications now.
A lot of moving parts.
Right. And the Senate is quite different from the House and what they're doing. But I think the signal's coming from the White House. And Trump has basically said, don't cave, don't cave. And until he says, okay, you can cave, I don't think this thing gets resolved.
Yeah, I think that the longer this goes on, it's interesting to see some of the polling on the shutdown that Trump is actually gaining support, which is also interesting because you're right. Most of the red states do benefit from the subsidies. So what is going to happen the longer this goes on? People, when they don't get paid, it starts to really hurt. So what does happen? Chuck Schumer and Representative Jeffries seem to be, we're not moving. But when people pay attention, you need those 60 votes. My hope is that the Republicans do not go nuclear and get rid of the filibuster. I think that is a disaster. So try to convince some of those Democrats. Let's get the government open. You voted for it before. You look like hypocrites because 13 other times you voted for a continuing resolution. Let's vote for it. Healthcare needs to be fixed. It is getting too expensive. Let's see what happens next.
All right. No end in sight, but we will keep an eye on that. Wendy and Sue, thank you. It was a quick segment. Appreciate you joining us. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Lively right here on Ocean State Media. Subscribe to us on YouTube and tell us what you think in the comments section below the video.